Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the webinar. Got a terrific webinar for you this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you are, and with a great speaker. So our speaker is Sal Patalano, someone I've known for many years. He's actually been voted best speaker at Channel Focus, which is quite an accolade. Sal is a serial entrepreneur. He's founded multiple IT companies over the years. He was an IBM business partner for over 15 years, one of their system integrators and resellers. For the last 13 years, he's worked on the vendor side of the house in various Fortune 100 roles, including roles at IBM, CA, and most recently, VP of Channels for Lenovo. He's listed as one of the top 100 most influential people in the channel. He's a well-known public speaker, and also very well known for having some very provocative views on the channel. So I'm very much looking forward to what Sal has to say. So without further ado, Sal, over to you.
Thank you, Rod. Well, first of all, I like to open most of these by thanking everyone for finding the time in the day. I'm always flattered when anyone is willing to listen to anything I have to say. It's always a compliment of sorts. And as Rod pointed out, I do like to take a very different spin on things. I typically am not going to, as many of you have heard me speak, hopefully, live or otherwise, I'm not particularly one who will delve into the details. I'm not going to get into the mechanics and how to do this and how to do that. I prefer to take a more provocative approach on things, more around thought leadership. Some have said that I have a knack for applying metaphysics to business. I'm not quite sure what that means, but I'll take it as a compliment. So before we get started, just very quick, some of you know, if you've been tracking some of the press of the last 3-4 months or so, that I have left Lenovo. I did join My Matrix. I did come on board as a partner and chief revenue officer. And just a couple of quick points about My Matrix. We're not going to do a sales pitch here. As I say, this is going to be more around thought leadership. But a couple of things. My Matrix has been around for quite some time, about 20 years. I came on board with the company for a variety of reasons, other than my personal relationship with the founder. Many of you know Harbinger, Kara. The company has an extremely stable tech base, and I was very interested in that. Having spent the number of years I did in the industry, that was very important to me. You can see the numbers and statistics on the screen. My Matrix essentially combines partner relationship management with things like channel marketing and asset management, sales enablement, marketing automation, just the complete door-to-door, cradle-to-grave platform for managing and running your partner channel and community. And because it's a unified platform, it really does deliver the suite in one fell swoop. Everything is there to drive lead to revenue, enablement, support. So a lot of what we're going to be talking about today, hopefully you'll find that our platform fits there. But again, that is as much of a sales pitch as you're going to get from me. So I'm going to go ahead and move on. So the real question is, why are we here today? I know some of you have lunch there in front of you, and that's great. I'm sure many of you, like many of us, probably haven't shaved for a while, and hopefully you guys are in California, have gotten out of your pajamas. This is a very strange situation we're dealing with, and I hope everyone on the call and their families and their close ones are safe. This is a very interesting and unique time we're going through that I'm sure we and our children will look back on with a variety of positions and perspectives. But what I'm going to ask you to do here is to take a step up to about 5,000 feet. So get out of the details you've spent most of the morning on here and some of the afternoon. Move away from some of the nitty-gritty, and let's just take a step up. And let's look down and take a different perspective on the business. Now, my perspective is that of both a partner and a vendor. Those of you again who know me, or if you've taken a look at my bio on LinkedIn, I was a partner for a very long period of time. I was an IBM business partner, and then moved to the vendor side, spending some time developing and working on channel programs at IBM, at CA, and most recently developing a commercial software business at Lenovo with the channel. Okay, So the reason we're here today is engaging with your partners remains one of your biggest day-to-day challenges, right? Particularly as the MSP model has become more critical to your business. Now, 2 or 3 years ago, I was criticized for taking the side of the debate that said the channel is really going to consolidate and to some extent dissipate. Well, what I didn't see, and I guess many of us didn't see, is the advent of the MSP was going to be much stronger and become much more necessary. And the nice thing about the MSP space is that it's somewhat recession-proof. When things are good, people are spending with their MSPs and they're growing the relationship. When things are bad, people are leaning on the MSPs to save some of the costs associated with doing things themselves, or in some cases, really keeping the cost down from working with some of us larger vendors, things like that. But I do believe the MSP space is somewhat recession-proof. I hope that will be true, particularly as we come out of this cloud that we're living under today, right? So what I'd like to do is offer up a few challenge areas for your consideration as we move through this. So before getting started, Rod, I understand we're going to have a couple of very simple, very quick polling questions, which will then report the data back to the folks on the call. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. And you'll see the first polling question appearing on your screen now. If everyone could vote now, I would very much appreciate it. So we'll give it another few seconds. Got about 60% of people on the call so far voting. So if people could continue to vote now, we'll leave it open for just a few more moments. There's still a few of you not voted yet, so do look at that screen and do pick, please, one of those options. Okay, so we've got pretty much everyone voted now. Last 3 or 4 seconds for anyone that remains. And Caleb, if you'd like to show the poll there. So, Sal, wonder if you'd like to comment on that. 22% have a homegrown platform, 53% have got a platform from a third-party vendor, and 25% don't actually have a platform at all.
Yeah, so this is consistent with what we've seen. I had a conversation with Jay McBain not too long ago over at Forrester, and Jay said he anticipated, or Forrester anticipated, about 50% of the vendors out there had a PRM from a third party, and about half of them were either living in a homegrown world or did not have one yet, as of yet. So it's about a 50-50 split. That's consistent with what I think we see. And the one piece of this, though, is that we have found, and hopefully we'll continue to see this, that those vendors who do have a PRM running from a third-party organization are looking to make some changes over the next 12 to 18 months. That's a piece of information that we have picked up of recent. So this is very good information consistent with what we would expect, Ron.
Excellent. And we got another question now for everyone. What percentage of your partners are actually using your PRM platform on a regular basis? So if everyone could vote now, that would be very, very cool. So keep those votes coming in. I think this could provide us with some really interesting information. Got just over 50% of you having voted so far. So come on, guys, get those votes in. Want to see what the overall results are. So we'll keep the poll open for another 10 or 15 seconds. So this is your chance to vote. Last few seconds for anyone who hasn't voted yet. So just get those votes in if you would. We've got over 80% of people on the call voted. So for the last few of you, give you 3 or 4 more seconds to get the votes in. Okay. Caleb, if you'd like to share the results. So Sal, as you can see, what percentage of your partners are actually using your platform on a regular basis? 26% said only 5%, 11% said 10, 26% 25%, 15%, 50%, and 22%, 50% or more. Wonder if you'd like to comment on those results, Sal.
I would, Rod. I think the telling factor here is that about 2/3 of the partners are really not exceeding 25% on adoption and utilization. This I think is one of the most critical aspects of the business, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit. I really do, because the higher this percentage utilization grows, the better the ROI. We're going to talk a little bit about ROI as well. So this is a telling fact, and this is something I think everyone should be very concerned with. The other thing is how we define actively using. We'll talk about this a little bit as well. I think for many of you, if you take deal registration out of this, the number falls off the table dramatically. And that should be a concern, right? We should all be thinking about that, because if deal reg comes off and the number's cut in half, then there's a problem. There's an issue, particularly around ROI. So this is a great piece of information, Rod. Thanks.
Okay, we will hand back to you, Sal, and over to you.
Great. Okay, so moving ahead, and I'm going to tend to move through this pretty quickly. I'd like to put two numbers up on the screen. And while I realize you can't actually comment back, we don't have a live audience, so to speak, sitting in a room, I'd like you to think about what you believe is represented by these numbers: 70% and 30%. And if we were sitting in a conference room, I'd have all of you throw up your hands and take some guesses, but I'm going to save us that exercise here. 70%, let's cut back actually to 30. 30% of our time is spent recruiting and getting partners on board. 30%, okay? While 70% is the time we need to spend keeping the partners productive and keeping them on board with your company. Now this is critical, right? I go back in the channel, as many of you do, a number of years, more than I care to mention. And in the old days, it was really pretty much get them signed up, get them trained, and then treat them like mushrooms. And I say this to be a little facetious, but at the same time, there's a great deal of truth that took place there. When you got a partner on board, we were selling typically, on-prem license agreements, and you pretty much had them locked in. It was pretty solid. What we call today churn or turnover wasn't all that prevalent. But here's the thing. Partners take a journey now, just like customers take a journey, right? And the way you treat them for the 75% of the journey they're taking with you after sign-up, recruitment, training, and the basics, they're actually up and running, is absolutely critical. And this is where, in many instances, we drop the ball. Now, we don't drop the ball intentionally. We're not coming in and saying, like the old days, well, to heck with them, let's just focus on getting more partners in. That's not what's happening. There are other factors at play here, which we're going to talk about, right? So today's assumption is that most products are generally equal. Now, some of you are sitting there going, well, that's not the case with my product. And I can assure you that while there are some outliers, right, and I will give you that, for the most part, this is a true fact. If you look at, and I have many friends in the cybersecurity space, they're great products, right? But they all pretty much meet the price of poker. Okay, they've all got some of the basic elements needed, some more, some less, some bells, some whistles. But at the end of the day, if we make the assumption that those products that are out there that are good, solid products technically measure up pretty much the same. So what's the reason that one partner goes with one over another? Now, there could be technical reasons based on the solution that the partner offers. Again, there are outliers to everything. But at the 80-20 rule, if we apply it, the bottom line is they're going to look for other things. And it's not just margin. I know many of you are thinking, yeah, well, you know what, buddy? It's margin. That's what it comes down to. I can tell you as a former partner of almost 20 years, that's not the case. It is not just margin. There are many other things that partners are measuring. Now, branding, plays a big role. But if you really want to look at it, it comes down, I believe, to things like ease of doing business and delivering specifically on the partner's needs and giving them the mechanisms they need to further their business. This is what they're looking for. As crazy as this sounds, they're not just looking for the best solution. Although that's critically important, there's no doubt, right? And a stable platform. They're looking for something that allows them to further their business, and they're looking to work with vendors who make it easy to work with them, okay? So the question becomes, why are they disengaging, right? Because they are. We're all signing partners up. We're investing in them. We're spending time. We're spending money. We're assigning resources. Yet we see a high percentage of disengagement. Or, as that previous poll just showed us, we get engagement, but we're not getting the kind of engagement we need. We're not getting 40, 50, 60, 75% engagement. In other words, they're using the platform on a regular basis. They're driving their business with it, okay? This is a question that we all need to be looking at aggressively, is the only way I can put it. So what I'd like to submit for everyone's consideration is the following. Right? The big problem here is that we're not necessarily giving them what they need. We're giving them what we need, or in some instances, what we think they need. This particular slide is just a quick representation of the various elements that go into a partner relationship management system, whether it's yours, it's ours, it's his, it doesn't matter. These are the basic elements, and you can really drill down into these and get quite complicated, okay? Now, not unlike us, unlike you, partners are often busy working in their business, and they're not spending enough time on growing their business, okay? Figure out how to solve this for them, and you're a hero. The other thing I like to point out, having been a partner for many years of my life, remember this, there is no bifurcation or disassociation or line of demarcation, whatever you wish to call it, between us, between the vendor and the partner. It's not an us and them anymore. And why? Well, first of all, they understand our businesses as well as we do. They understand our products, if not as well, if not maybe better, okay? They're business people. Any one of them could be working for us, and any one of us could be working for them. So all the lines have been erased here. And this is critical. And this is how we have to look at them. We really need to see the partners as equals, as part of the team. We say it all the time, but we don't necessarily put the actions behind the words. What the partners are looking for, and my partner was explaining this to me in some notes he sent me, partners are looking for easy to use tools. And he's right. Things that are easy to implement, that allow them to drive best practices. And they're looking for sales and marketing strategies that will help them grow the business. Now, they don't necessarily expect us as vendors to sit back and say, John, Mary, here's exactly what you need to do. But what they do expect to receive are the tools that will let them behave that way. And when they do need help, they expect to be able to get in touch with someone who can help them. And when, in many cases, when we do attempt to do what I've just described, right, the user experience is disjointed. And it rarely delivers across the full suite of what they're looking for. And we're going to talk about this a little bit in a moment. Essentially, we focus too much on one aspect. We focus on what we consider to be important. And what really needs to be done here is the research needs to be done and decisions need to be made around delivering a robust PRM. But in many cases, when we take this to management, or if we are management and we're looking at it, we perceive this as being difficult. It's complicated. It's not something we can take on. There's other projects in front of it. I would submit for everyone's consideration, if the channel really is your force multiplier, if it is how you extend your sales team, or in some cases, how you drive 90% of your fulfillment, this is a primary focus. There is no task that is too difficult. It cannot be put on a back burner. This needs to be moved to the front. And by the way, based on my background, having moved through Fortune 500 and having been a partner, I've seen this, and I've seen organizations who have made this a primary focus look at tremendous success. And to that end, I want to throw up 3 more numbers for everyone's consideration. 45%, 33%, and $0. So again, we could have some fun with this if we were all sitting in a room, right? I'd ask you what you thought these represent. And I'd have you, give us some comebacks. It's always a fun exercise. I know many of you participated in this. But I'm going to give it to you the way we perceive it based on statistics we've gathered through the industry, starting with 45%. This represents the average increase in partner engagement from companies that have deployed a PRM solution or a PRM platform. Based on whatever they were running in the past, and they've made the jump over and fully deployed, these are the numbers. 45% increase in partner engagement. 33%. Average increase in deal registration. Now, I put this one up because I know deal reg is near and dear to everyone's heart. I can't tell you, again, as a partner or in the Fortune 500 space, how often I heard deal reg. And the other big one is MDF, right? Well, deal registration is something that is changing, right? I know many of you are looking at it and saying, well, it's not quite as critical as it used to be, okay? And there's a reason for that. And the reason is we're learning to focus more and more on the outcome and less on how we get to the outcome, right? This is the big shift, and that's another presentation in and of itself that I've given in the past. So we're not going to go into that. But I think we're going to see, well, it's still important today, and it's a big part of our channel programs. We are absolutely going to see deal reg become less important over time. And that's one of my predictions. $0. $0 when you talk to folks is the expected return on investment when they deploy a PRM system. And let me tell you, that could not be further from the truth. Now, some of you, again, you're on the other end of the line nodding your heads going, yeah, we get it. Okay. I mean, we understand that. Those of you nodding your heads, you would be absolutely amazed at the number of your colleagues that still believe it's something you need to do, but it's not something you can necessarily pin a return on investment to. Again, categorically incorrect. We're going to talk about it a little bit, and I'm going to attempt to throw a couple of ideas out there in terms of how we might be able to look at that and how we might be able to change that perception a bit. So let's explore what prevents vendors from deploying a true PRM solution. Now, this is a list that, again, I know all of you could probably send me all sorts of bullets on this, right? And I appreciate that, and I'd actually love to see them. But these are the 10 that we think really are those that we need to look at, right? And some of them come down to perception. Some of them are really just hard, cold facts. But we're going to step through these, and I'm going to throw a couple of ideas out on each one of them. So hopefully the objective here is to get you thinking. And I always like to say that with any audience I present to, if 50% of you turn around and say, hey, this guy's out in left field, he doesn't get it, and the other half say, wow, I've been given something to think about, then I think it was a good webinar. I know if I come away that way, I feel like it was good investment of my time. So let's start with awareness, okay? The first thing I'll tell you is that in many cases, people and organizations confuse PRM with CRM. And that absolutely couldn't be further from the truth. Now, some CRM vendors will tell you they have PRM modules, and they do, in fact, but they're extremely limited. And we go in and we say, well, heck, if it comes from company XYZ and it's a PRM, I trust I'm going to deploy it, and we think that's what it needs to be. And it's not. In fact, we and a number of our competitors, right, just to be fair, even-handed here, are working with some of the CRM publishing houses, and they're using us to expand their PRM capabilities. So don't necessarily get confused with apples versus oranges here. The other thing is, many folks we talk to, and we get this from the analysts as well, are really unaware of the capabilities of just how much a PRM can do. And I'm going to show you in the next slide really some of the areas that a PRM can help with. Some of them may surprise you, I think, or may not even have entered your mind in terms of what a PRM can do, right? The other thing I'll tell you is to keep in mind, your channel program is not a PRM. It's not a partner relationship management platform. It's a channel program. And again, there's a huge difference between the two. The PRM will support and drive, strengthen, and solidify your channel program. It will also point out errors and flaws in it that you can fix, okay? But they're not one and the same. PRM supports channel program. right? And the final point I'd like to make is that a PRM is not just a plugin. It's not something that you go out and you buy and say, well, here's a great add-on, and here we go and rock and roll, and this is going to work. And it's not. So this is a very interesting slide. And I know that when the deck becomes available, I'm sure this is one many of you will focus on. And you should, by the way, okay? There are effectively, as we see it, as I see it, there are three modules that comprise a legitimate unified platform of what a partner relationship management platform should do. There's operations, channel operations management, there's channel marketing, and there's channel sales enablement, okay? This is where we usually get hung up, in that middle row right there. This is where many organizations believe they should be focused. This is what a PRM is. I can assure you, channel marketing is not PRM. PRM is much, much broader. And as you look at this slide, okay, you begin to see some of the complexity of the things that a PRM should be able to deliver. Now, don't get me wrong, marketing is a big piece of it. But the bottom line is, partners don't have the time or the inclination to visit multiple platforms to do this. They don't want a channel marketing piece and then run off and do their operations with someone else, or do their CPQ, their price quotes, with another tool. They're looking for something unified. And PRM is much broader than what you might think. Just taking a look at this, some of you, again, that top right corner, partner portal and deal reg, they go, hey, that's it. For that, I stick a little marketing behind it, and hot dog, I'm good to go. Well, let me tell you, a sobering statement. That's not what your competition's doing. And when they're delivering more, significantly more, that in itself is a reason for a partner or a group of partners to migrate from you to them. Again, based on the primary assumption that you both have very good, very stable products. Some bells, some whistles, one versus the other, but that's enough right there to move the partner over from what we've seen. The other thing to keep in mind is partners really do get zero help in terms of building their local brand. Again, generalized statement. I know some of you are all over this, so please take everything with a grain of salt. Not everything I say here applies to everyone. Adoption. Now, to me, this is the most important topic of the 10 we're going to talk about. This is critical, right? You must drive downstream adoption when you deploy a PRM. First of all, that's what's going to drive your return on investment. And today, you're seeing anywhere between 10 to 20% on average of partners actually adopting a PRM. Now, the statistics we put up there were a little skewed from that, but keep in mind this is a small random sampling of about, 75 people or so, whatever the number is. So keep that in mind. You can reach 65 to 75%. And by the way, we have case studies proving that. The data exists, right? It can be published, it can be provided. But the typical deployment goes something like this. The PRM decision is made, the basic setup is done, it's rolled out of the box, a couple of days, week or so, and then it's wishful thinking, right? Here we go, it's out there, hold our breath, see what happens. 60 days later, people start giving up, right? It's not working, what did we do wrong? Did we make the right investment? And so some folks come in and they try to twist it here and twist it there. That's not how you drive adoption in a PRM. You basically have to treat this almost as a forced function. For example, by making your PRM your primary portal of entry for your partners, that helps drive adoption. For some of you, driving deal registration through your PRM, that drives adoption. But you must have vendor participation. If you buy a system from a vendor, the vendor must participate. They should be doing things like outbound tele to help you reach out to the partners. Heck, tell them it exists. Let them know it's there. Things like that, right? You should be getting free training for the partners. Why wouldn't the vendor come in and help train the partners, provide some what we call concierge services to help them get up and running? Let them run a marketing campaign. Let them download some content. Let them look at what's available to them. Now, you can do promotion incentives, both short and long term. For example, we all know margins a lever in training. You can work your MDF through participation, deliver playbooks, social promotion. You can provide internal licensing, the use of the product internally based on participation. through the PRM. You can deliver free content. You can actually modify classification levels. There's a lot you can do. But, and this is very, very important, what if the pricing for the solution you deploy was based on adoption? What if your vendor said to you, we're going to deploy the solution and we're going to drive your pricing levels based on how high your adoption percentage is? Now, I want you all to think about that for a minute. That now puts the burden back on to the vendor from whom you purchased and deployed your PRM system. Now, the vendor gets paid more if they drive higher adoption, and you get better ROI if you drive higher adoption. This is a win-win. So think about this. This is one of the suggestions that we in particular have from an industry standpoint. Adapt to change, right? Change is difficult, particularly in Fortune 500, even Fortune 2000 environments. It's got to be recognized by senior management. There's got to be a champion behind it. And in many cases, we don't have a channel strategy in terms of change when it comes to things outside of our channel program. That's a problem, right? There needs to be a channel change strategy. Most of us don't have it. We have change, organizational change. We have all sorts of change policies and procedures in place. Most of us rarely have it around the channel. So this is something to think about prior to deploying a PRM. How can I tweak and make changes, if not to my channel program, then to my overall sales motion or social or content delivery and syndication? How do I make changes to that to adapt to a PRM to really allow everyone to take advantage of it? Another one we see a lot of is DIY, right? Do it yourself. This whole not invented here mentality and the old school approach to content and campaigns. We think about static content. We think about helping partners run email campaigns and things like that. And ultimately what we have, and by the way, we're looking at this now, and I'm sure many of our competitors are seeing this as well. We're looking at several companies that have a patchwork quilt. And it literally started 20 years ago with some type of a portal, maybe a pricing tool. And over the years, they've layered on, and now they have this monster that they're using as a PRM system that's absolutely a disaster and does not get the job done. So if you're sitting in a DIY environment, that's something that fundamentally has to change before you're really going to put yourself in a position to deploy a state-of-the-art, a world-class type PRM system. ROI is another favorite, right? When it comes to ROI for deploying a PRM, there are true cost savings associated with it, right? And the ROI is dramatically impacted by the percent of adoption. And it creates stickiness. And the other thing it does is it delivers great visibility, much better forecasting, improved resource allocation. But, and here's the big but, no one's really delivered a true ROI model. Now, there's some out there, and you'll go to a website here and a website there, and you might find an analyst that puts something together. But the reason no one's done it, is vendors are not stepping up to the plate, okay, to work to quantify what ROI is. They're putting the burden back on the buyer. And the reason the PRM vendors are not doing it is because they themselves have not taken the time to really sit down and understand it. What are the true levers that drive ROI? And here's the funny part. This is not complicated, right? I'm going to say we're working on it. And I want to be careful not to turn this, as Rod said, don't turn this into a sales pitch. So I won't. But we are working on it. And it will be done. And we won't be the only ones to do it. We'll set the bar and we'll get it all started and fired up and we'll get everybody looking at it. But we're working on this and it's there. I kid you not. There is a definitive ROI associated with deploying PRM. And again, some of you are nodding your head saying, we get it. But the vast majority of folks looking at PRM don't get it. So we're taking it upon ourselves to actually work on this. Strategy. There's no real, as I said earlier, no real channel change strategy. And when folks deploy the PRM, again, they're looking at marketing. It's all about marketing and marketing. Well, that's not what a PRM system is. And I'm going to keep saying this over and over because it's absolutely critical. This is where we're getting stuck in the mud, okay? Resources must be focused on delivering what partners need, not what we need to justify the program, okay? If it's deployed correctly, and if we focus on giving the partners what they're looking for, and we set proper expectation, it will justify itself. We will hit KPIs, and those KPIs will match against ROI. This is the stuff we, and I hope, many of our competitors are working on every day. This is what's important, right? This is where we've got to justify the spend. Messaging. This goes to the whole, how do you come to market with a PRM? This is more our concern, right, than it is yours, right? But there's conflicting messages from the vendors, from the analysts, from the partners. Talk to a partner, talk to an analyst at Gartner or Forrester or anyone else. Go talk to a vendor. Everybody's got a different perspective of what the messaging is, what a PRM platform is, what it should do, what it delivers, why you need to have it, okay? And partners' needs have changed, and they're changing every day, so that makes it even more complex, okay? Not all platforms, are created equal. Not all are unified. Some of them are siloed, okay? So I do think the messaging in the marketplace has confused a lot of folks. That can be fixed. That's going to be fixed. There's people working on that as we speak today, okay? Leadership is one I debated whether or not putting this up here as something for you guys to consider, you guys, gals, everyone to consider. Leadership in our industry on the PRM side really has been inconsistent. And I think that's because there's not been enough transparency. No one has set the bar on the standards and how our particular side of the industry, the PRM solutions and manufacturers, should be working, what we should be doing, what we should be focusing on, what we should be releasing and telling the market. Someone's got to step up and really set the bar from an industry standpoint here, right? Take the time to really dig deep and be able to communicate out to potential buyers out there. Not all platforms are created equal. And then finally, cost. Now, this, and again, I say this, and I'm in the industry, right? But I have to say this. Pricing is almost comical in some instances. It is inconsistent, right? Pricing should be consumption-based. It's as simple as that. The playing field needs to be leveled. You should not be able to go to vendor A and get a price that's, in the clouds, and go to vendor B and get a price that's down at street level, and then find another one who's in between. That makes no sense. We don't see that in CRM. We don't see it in disaster, and recovery and backup. We don't see it in cybersecurity. We just don't see it. And yet in our industry, we see it. So that needs to be fixed. Bottom line, we need consistent pricing. We need clear expectations around what gets delivered, right? We need very consistent adoption around that, which again, I think comes back to pricing, right? And we need the ability to communicate this through proper messaging, okay? So I know, Rob, we only had a certain amount of time. I tried to keep us within those limits. Those are the thoughts. And folks, I apologize for going a little quickly. Most of you can tell from my Southern accent that I'm from New York, and I tend to move pretty quickly. I'm sure everyone picked up on it. But these are the points I'd like to put out there to really get everyone thinking. Hopefully you look at this and you say, hey, some of this makes some sense. We need to start looking at this. And if you don't, I would leave you with this thought. And we all see this a lot, right? We sit back thinking, it's Einstein's definition of insanity. We look at this a great deal. So hopefully that's a bit of a joke. So with that, I'd like to open the floor to questions. And Rod, I'm going to hand it right on back to you.
Thanks, Sal. And we have a few questions coming in. One of the questions I have here, if partners have up to 16 vendors, what's going to make them come to my PRM solution? What are the key things that are going to make it really, really cool for the partners to come to me?
Well, it's a fair question. I do think that we've covered some of that already. I really do think it comes down to the experience. Bottom line, it comes down to making it easy to do business with them. It comes down for them to do business with you. It comes down to really delivering, and I'm gonna run back to this slide here. It really comes down to delivering on these pieces. Slide I believe it was on number 2. Delivering on this, Rod, I think this is the difference, right? If you're delivering these components right here and they're seamless and they're easy to work with, and you have a concierge team who, when they call in and they want to get a campaign done, or they need help with content, or they're having trouble with syndication, things like that, or they need a 360-degree insight to everything that they're working on with you, with your deal reg and content and campaigns and everything that's happening in pricing. This makes a difference. I mean, heck, as a partner, I go here. So I really think it comes down to the journey that they're going to take with you. And then the other thing I think we have to look at very, very closely really is going to be around pricing, right? It's going to be consistent pricing, meaning from our side, the ability to deliver back from the CPQ module that hopefully you put your pricing in through, a very simple, very easy means for the partners to go in and drive their pricing and deliver back proposals and things like this. As a partner, we just don't want to spend a lot of time doing things. We're essentially pretty lazy, right? I mean, and I say this a bit tongue in cheek, but if we weren't, and I've done both, we go back and work in Fortune 500, right? Where they crack the whip. As a partner, we want to do things our way. We want to make it simple, and we want to grow the value of our business. So if I had to come back on one thing, Ron, I would come back and I would say it's the user experience for the partner in working with the vendor. That's, for me, always been number one.
Okay, I've got another question coming in here, Sal. Can you provide some examples of how ROI can be measured?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I think we talked about that a little bit here. Let me bring up that slide. Here we go. So when we look at things like ROI, there's a couple of things we've started looking at because we do want to put out an ROI tool, right? And some of the things we're looking at, first of all, is cost savings, right? There's a significant amount of cost savings that are associated with deploying a PRM. And that's really taking a look and studying at what those cost savings are. It might be a little front-end loaded at first, but they're ultimately going to be there. I think the other thing that comes down is adoption. If more and more partners are now coming in and you get the percentages up to 20, 30, 40%, and partners are now using the platform seamlessly and getting done the things they need to get done, they're not only reducing the call in to you guys, right? But what they're doing is they're running more campaigns, right? They're doing more with the platform. Things that they might have thrown over the shoulder and just not spent any time on, the platform's allowing them to do. And I think that's critical. Syndication, the ability to get the content and do branding very, very easily, the ability to pick up the phone, get somebody on the line that can help them walking through campaigns and like that. So I do think the ROI comes in adoption and utilization, right? And there's also, to me, you could talk about things like forecasting, which is very, very important, but resource allocation. When you start looking at what a partner needs to get done working with a vendor, the less resource you can assign to that allows those resources to go off and do other things and turning these partners into more self-sufficient machines. And then the other piece, and we've seen a bunch of this, word of mouth. A partner starts working with a vendor, and we see this all the time with our MSP business. We see this all the time. They come back and they refer people over to us. We, again, as you know, Rod, we have the two platforms. We sell both to vendors and we sell to SMB, the MSP space. And we have a significantly large number of MSPs, and we get the vast majority of them through referrals. Well, if you're a vendor and you suddenly have, your partners referring you back out to other partners of their nature or their ilk or type, that's going to bring ROI up as well. But let me just say in closing, we're going to be developing something around this that provides quantifiable ROI. And when that tool is available, everyone will know about it. And I would invite the person asking the question, the caller, to take a look for that when it comes out. And I'd love to hear back if he or she thinks we got it right.
Okay, and I've got another question for you, Sal. If you're a company without a partner program and no PRM, which should come first? Or would you suggest developing them both together? In other words, if you're building a partner program from scratch, should you develop the PRM alongside the partner program? Should you develop the partner program first and then bring the PRM around that? How would you suggest people tackle that particular issue?
That's a, that's a really good question. And by the way, in my own personal career, I've had to do that on at least 3 occasions. Twice personally, when I was a partner and a vendor when I was actually developing software, and then I had to do that at IBM when we built up our smart business portfolio. We had to go out and build a net new SMB partner channel from the ground up. Excellent question. I would advise the following. If the PRM solution you're looking at is reasonably priced such that you can do them both simultaneously, I would advise strongly at putting them both out at the same time. And the analogy I would give back is if you were developing a sales force of direct sellers, you would put your CRM in from day one. Whatever it happens to be that you're putting in, even with 1 or 2 salespeople, you'd start with a simple CRM if the price was reasonable, right? If it didn't break your bank. So I would suggest if the price is reasonable, it fits into your budget, absolutely start it from day one. Don't overcomplicate it. Start with, one of the simple modules of the 3. Maybe in this instance, you do start with one of the modules of the 3 we were showing. But boy, I'll tell you what, Rod, you do this together, and what you're ultimately going to wind up with is a really slick environment that's well thought out, and the cost efficiencies would be outstanding.
Sal, we're pretty much out of time. In fact, we're slightly over time, but thank you for a really informative, as always, splendidly delivered webinar. And thank everyone else for attending and joining us. The webinar has been recorded and will be posted into the Channel Focus community, so you'll be able to see it again. And I think everyone on the call will join me, Sal, in thanking you very much indeed.
You're very welcome. The pleasure, as always, was all mine. Thank you for allowing me to present.